Just as a quick disclaimer, a lot of the footage that you're going to be seeing in this review is from my second playthrough of Final Fantasy XVI in Final Fantasy mode. So if you see enemies with higher levels, or you see me with different icons, that's exactly why. But regardless, please enjoy the video. So I just finished Final Fantasy XVI, and all I can say is that if you were disappointed about where I put Final Fantasies 10, 12, 13, and 15, you're probably still going to be disappointed because Final Fantasy XVI has become one of my favorites. Say I've been deceived by action games all you want, but Final Fantasy XVI is a must-play and a well-worth entry in the series. For those of you who don't know, almost a year ago I uploaded a passion project where I found and played every single Final Fantasy mainline title, except for the online ones, I'm getting to those, and I put them in a ranking video from my least to most favorite. It's one of my most viewed videos on my channel, and I really appreciate all the support on that video. You guys are awesome. It merely consisted of me literally tracking down every single mainline title for about like 2 years and playing through them all, and most of those ranking spots were of my first time playing it, and it was a lot of fun to make. Now this video in particular is not going to reveal where I put Final Fantasy XVI on my list. I'm saving that for an update video that I'm going to make when I'm done playing the online games. I have been waiting and anticipating this game ever since I got done with that video, and almost everything in Final Fantasy XVI blew me away. And if you guys want to see my live reactions, we did stream the entirety of this game, the first playthrough, on OperationGamer Live, so please be sure to check that out in the description below. There's a whole playlist for you guys to enjoy. Now, I'm making this review knowing full well that there are many people that are torn about this entry. Whether some people are upset that it's not turn-based, some people saying that it's not fully an RPG, some people saying that it's too easy, and others just stretching it into a stupid detail that I really don't want to get into. But some people are even going as far as saying, this isn't a Final Fantasy game at all. Which is really dumb considering it's in the title. But in all seriousness though, I usually write these reviews raw. Like as soon as I'm done playing the game, I sit down on my computer and I just start typing away about everything that I liked, disliked, everything that I knew from my raw experience on playing this game. But reviewing upon my ranking video and knowing that there were some details that I missed in other games, and some people like to point that out in the comments, so thank you everyone for, letting me know what I've done wrong. I am really open to shit that I fucked up on, and I'm willing to go back and look. This one, I really wanted to think. I wanted to sit, reflect, watch other reviews, see what other people thought, see if there was anything that I actually didn't like that I just suppressed, because I had so much fun with this game that I focused a lot on the positives and what I enjoyed about it, that I didn't really think on the negatives. And it really all did come to light as soon as I finished the game, but I still wanted to see the other side of the argument so I could have as much information as possible, which is another reason why this review took so long to make. I just wanted to make sure I had all of my facts straight. I played through every single detail of this game, and I wanted to give you guys my full review. Because as much as I really love this game, there are some things that are a little problematic, and I wanted to just make sure that I had all of my ducks in a row before I officially gave my thoughts to you guys. But without further ado, let's get started then, shall we? This is my review and my full thoughts on the entirety of Final Fantasy XVI. One of the biggest highlights of this game is 100% the story. Final Fantasy XVI's story takes on many themes of political power, slavery, vengeance, brotherhood, betrayal, and fate. This is one of those games that truly made me feel. And I always say that if something makes me feel things, you got yourself a good game, movie, or whatever. Final Fantasy XVI takes place in Valistia. You play as Clive Rossfield, a nobleman from the Kingdom of Rosaria. He and his younger brother Joshua live with their mother and father. The game starts off strong as just depicting the world that you're in. This world reminds me a lot of the origins of Final Fantasy and where the series came from before Final Fantasy VII. I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but I do want to explain the setup as for it's in the demo that carries over to the main game. Joshua is what's known as a dominant, which is like a reincarnation of one of the many summons, or in this case, icons. He is the dominant of the Phoenix and is destined to rule Rosaria when he comes of age. Clive is appointed as his shield and is granted the blessing of the Phoenix, which allows him to use part of the Phoenix's powers, such as like casting fire. During a mission, Clive and Joshua head to Phoenix Gate with their father and unfortunately are attacked by Imperial soldiers. One thing you will notice in this game is that it definitely earns its M rating. There's a lot of blood and curse words and partial nudity. Yeah, this is definitely one of the more mature Final Fantasy games out there. To some, this might turn you away, but I personally love it. While it definitely earns it, it doesn't overdo it to the point where it feels like it's being forced. From those on the outside looking in at the wrong time, it can be awkward, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing that I feel ruins the game. It's not trying to be something, and it's just part of the world. And I want to come back to this in a second, but let's continue for now. Unfortunately, their father does die, which causes Joshua to fully prime into the Phoenix. After this happens, a second icon of fire is awakened and they battle it out, with the Phoenix losing while Clive watches. In the end, Clive is taken by the Empire and unfortunately is put into slavery. All of this happens in literally just the first couple hours of the game, and I was absolutely hooked. Everything that I just kind of explained there is just in the demo version of the game, which you can play for free, and if you decide to buy the full game, your progress from the demo will carry over into your actual save file. I actually did intentionally avoid the demo because I wanted the full raw experience of this game as soon as I purchased it. Eventually, Clive ends up being taken in by Sidolphus, the leader of a local rebellion and the dominant of Ramuh. Clive ends up dealing with feelings of vengeance, which eventually turns into a path of self-discovery. That might sound cheesy and weird, but you'll see what I mean when you play the game. One thing I feel Final Fantasy XVI does really well are the characters. Obviously, not all of them are perfect, but this game really does feel like it's mostly about the people. Most of the side quests throughout this game helps you understand the people of this community that you're in. I'll come back to side quests later on, but through this game, I truly thought I was getting to know the people of Valistia and what kind of world we were dealing with here. Another major key factor is magic. Magic is important to the plot because of the Mother Crystals, which grant these magical abilities through smaller crystals that the citizens use, and these people known as bearers, who can use magic without crystals, but at the unfortunate cost of eventually being petrified if used too much. Bearers in this world are treated like slaves and are given brands across their face by the Empire. They're treated like total shit, and you really start to feel that throughout the game. I won't get into more details without spoiling, but there were two specific side quests that even replaying it in New Game Plus, oh god, those two side quests just gave me chills every single time that I heard these assholes speak about how they treat their bearers. Like, you truly start to feel for these people that are being treated like shit by these people who are these egotistical assholes who think they're above everyone else. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of side quests like this, but these two just stick into my mind and I can't get them out of my head, man. Ugh, god, it gives me chills every time. But the world in this game is so strong, with so many interesting people to come across and learn about. I will admit that this game is very heavily story-driven, but I personally don't mind that. The Last of Us was very story-driven, and that's kind of what it reminded me of. Heavy story bits with gameplay thrown in. But there was never a time when I got done with a stream and said, wow, I can't wait to take a break. I always wanted to keep going and continue to learn more about this game and this world that I was thrusted into. I will admit though, the pacing is kind of wonky. The game splits into main quests and side quests as mentioned before. While the contents of these side quests didn't bother me personally, I will admit that when you're in the middle of this big, huge moment in the story and get hit with about like 5 to 6 side quests at once, it kind of kills the momentum. I will yield to this. I love that the side quests build the world, and I'm more than happy to do them to build it. But I will yield that they kind of kill the pacing of the game. This is the most amount of side quests that I have seen pop up at once. Granted, it's probably one of the bigger pauses in between, because we gotta sail to Ash, right? But I will yield to the fact that it kind of kills it, the pacing just a little bit. This is normally where I would say, if that bothers you, just skip the side quests. They don't matter that much. But the biggest thing about this game is that if you skip a lot of the side content, you are missing out on so much context about these characters that you learn about. This game relies so much on world building, and those side quests, even though being presented as optional, are very important to actually get to know the community that you're in. Look, I'm a completionist anyway, so regardless, I'm going to be doing these side quests. But I really do feel like it's important to just take the time to do these side quests so that you can learn more about this community that you're thrown in. But, like I said, it unfortunately does come at the cost of messing with the pacing of the game, which really sucks, but it's nothing that's like game-breaking, if that makes sense. Like, the pacing feels wonky, but it doesn't kill the game for me. And with that being said, the world building in this game is so utterly strong, which makes me not really care about doing the side quests anyway. I want to talk about this right now because I talked about this in my Catherine video, and I just want to point out one of the strongest characters in this game. There is a character named Dion. He is the Prince of Sanbreque and the Dominant of Bahamut. Dion is a strong fighter and willing to do anything for his people. And there is this scene where he is shown kissing another man. This might be weird to bring up, don't get me wrong, but I want to give this game praise for not making it into a huge deal. I've seen a lot of games like Catherine where they have a gay character and they go on this rampage to try to make it a big deal. But no, they just have it there as a part of his character. No one storms in to tell Dion about how wrong it is to love another man, but they just casually slip it in there and move on. I love this because it shows how these kinds of characters can exist, and the whole game doesn't need to make this big deal, and I honestly hope we can see more of this representation in future games to come. Dion is judged more by his actions more than his sexuality, and seeing this in such a huge game as Final Fantasy is fantastic, and I really, really hope we can see more of this in the future. Look, there's not a lot I can say about the presentation that hasn't already been said. This game is flat out gorgeous. All of the environments are amazing to look at. From the dead blight-covered wastelands, to beautiful green forests, to vast desert hills. All the environments from this game felt amazing to traverse through. The environments, to me at least, felt like they changed as the game progressed as well, making it even more immersive to play through. The best example I can give is towards the end of the game where everything feels like it's going to shit. Exploration, though, is a little bit of a different story. This game is not open world, though it has different zones that you can run through and go find hunts and such. I honestly think that if Final Fantasy XIII took this approach to its level design, there wouldn't be much reason to complain about the linearity. But there's really no reason to explore anything. No secret dungeons or big optional treasures to go out and seek. As much as I love how the levels looks, its contents are yet to be fully realized. But the environments are further helped by the game's soundtrack. Honestly, it took me a minute to get used to it, but I found myself humming to the battle theme every single time it played. The music helps set the tone of the world that you're going through, growing even more somber as the game progresses. There wasn't a song in the game that I disliked. There was a good variety to the soundtrack too, from soft melodies in the forest areas, to a chippy theme when you're at the hideaway, to some weird electronic themes at some point. The battle theme though, I goddamn love it. One thing I always look forward to in any RPG is that battle theme. These battle themes are incredibly epic. I especially love the boss battle themes. They made me truly feel like I was taking on a massive foe and that I'm fighting for my life. The music in this game has to be one of my favorite things about this game. Also, the game performed incredibly well. The load times were fast, especially using the whole sneak through the cracked load times. People made a big deal about this, by the way, and I don't personally understand why. From what I can remember, I had no big lag spikes or frame rate drops. I played on performance mode and the game ran incredibly well. Every cutscene in the game also looked great. There were a few moments where I felt the lip syncing was a little awkward, but not enough to pull me out of the moment. There's no doubt in my mind that Final Fantasy XVI is one of the best looking games in the franchise. Alright, it's time to get to the most important bits of this review, the gameplay. Why don't we start with the combat? Final Fantasy XVI is the second fully action mainline Final Fantasy game, not including the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, as much as purists disliked the combat in Final Fantasy XV, I actually kind of enjoyed it. In comparison to other action games, Final Fantasy XV's combat is more simplistic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm gonna say this now. Final Fantasy XV's combat blew 15's out of the water. I absolutely love the combat of Final Fantasy XVI. If I could use one word to describe the entirety of Final Fantasy XV's combat, it would be satisfying. Every single time I played this game, over and over, the biggest word that I can use to say about the combat is that it's satisfying. This game relies a lot on dodging and countering, whereas like Final Fantasy XV's was more like blocking and parrying. But the countering in this game is so much fun to get right. In terms of the actual combat, you got your basic square button attack and your triangle button range magic attack, which you can mix and match and create some minor combos like magic burst in the middle of your combos. There are other abilities you can unlock, such as a lunge attack or a sword burst attack. Then we get into your equipped icon. You start off with just the Phoenix, but as you progress through the game, you will gain new icons that add to your arsenal and change the way you fight in battle. Each icon has a circle button move which can activate different abilities. For example, the Phoenix allows Clive to phase shift all Final Fantasy XV-like towards an enemy to close some distance, while Garuda gives Clive the ability to grapple smaller enemies to bring them closer to him, or to bring bigger enemies down to their knees after breaking their stagger meter halfway. There's even one that literally adds shot locks. Then we get into your iconic abilities. These are equipped in the menus and can be easily accessed by pressing R2. These moves can be used to deal major damage to the enemy. These moves range from a Scarlet Cyclone to literally ripping your enemies to shreds. There are 4 abilities per icons, with one of them being uber powerful that you can unlock in the ability tree. You gain AP after completing battles and certain missions, and you can unlock these iconic abilities and eventually master them to the point where you can equip a different icon's ability to any other icon that you have equipped. This game may not have a deep character customization as other Final Fantasy games, but I think this game offers a lot in terms of customizing how you want to play the game. Especially when you can refund your ability points with no penalty and go a different route if you want. You can go from dodge heavy to block heavy once you get the Titan as well. And switching icons, which you can have 3 equipped at a time, is instantaneous, and you develop your own playstyle as you progress. Now, there is an argument out there that is saying that this game isn't an RPG or doesn't feel like an RPG. Now, I'd like to disagree with that to a certain extent. You gain experience points and increase your stats, but at the same time, it does feel like that you're using the same moves on every enemy, and there's no difference in what you do. There's a strange absence of elemental weakness and resistances. This was one of my disappointments in Final Fantasy XVI. It just felt strange to be hitting a bomb with fire attacks and doing the same amount of damage. Now, I can understand that this would mean a player would get soft locked to the point where you couldn't progress, but it's not like other games haven't done it before. This game already does have a fairly forgivable checkpoint system, and I don't think adding elemental resistances would have been that big of a deal. Now, this is mostly just a design choice and aesthetics, but I also thought it would have been cool if Clive's lunge and sword burst attacks reflected the element that he's using, kind of like how they did with his magic. But that's just something I thought would have been cool. Your party as well, I'll be honest, I wish we got more out of them. You do have Torgal, one of the best dogs in all of gaming, who does fight with you for most of the game. You can control some of his movesets with the press of a directional button, which boils down to 2 attacks and a minor heal. Look, I love Torgal, don't get me wrong, but gameplay-wise, he just doesn't seem like that valuable of a party member. None of your party members have health bars or gain experience points, except for Torgal to a minimal degree. And your party members do swap out more often, so I can understand why, but it feels just like such a missed opportunity. For the most part, you only play as Clive and Clive alone. Now, let me be clear, this did not kill the game for me. Come on, I'm a Kingdom Hearts player. I'm used to having party members in RPGs where they feel like nothing but damage sponges to the enemy. But at least there, they had health bars, and they felt somewhat important to the gameplay. I think for this type of Final Fantasy game, having some sort of KO system for our party members would have satisfied some fans. Not game-breaking in the slightest, but just a missed opportunity. Then of course you have your limit break, which you unlock pretty early on. A bar below your health will fill as you deal damage and receive damage. Once the bars are full, you can click the analog sticks and become half primed, dealing more damage and refilling your health bar. This is best utilized after an enemy is completely staggered or when you run out of items, which you can only hold so many, which I found to be an interesting challenge. Speaking of items, you of course have your equipment. You have your swords, belts, cuffs, and up to 3 accessories that have various effects. This was another complaint that I saw, that the equipment didn't matter as much and it felt like it made little to no difference, and there's no point in getting any gear that lowered but raised other stats. And honestly, that's fair. It didn't raise much concern to me, but I will admit that the crafting system did get overlooked a bit at some points during my playthrough. I mostly just saw this for a different option for getting gear. Alright, let's talk about him. The one minor thing that so many people I see losing their shit over. The accessibility options. Final Fantasy XVI gives players at the start of the game 5 different rings that make the game easier, but takes up one of your accessory slots. You have rings that automatically use a potion whenever Clive takes a certain amount of damage, one that evades certain attacks, one that will prompt you to evade, etc. I think the idea for these were that a lot of Final Fantasy fans came from turn-based RPGs, so they wanted to make the game easier for those who weren't comfortable with action RPGs. But then you have people using this to discredit the game, saying that this just makes the gameplay itself and makes it way too easy. One of the big arguments comes from this game journalist clip that I saw. Basically, they were playing one of the first fights in the game while eating a sandwich, and they were playing the game one-handed, basically saying that the game plays itself. People are saying that developers shoot themselves in the foot whenever they add accessibility options, and there were times where games didn't have difficulty options, and all this crap about how accessibility options are bad and games don't need to cater to every need. Look, I understand this argument. Games don't need to cater to everyone. That's basically the Final Fantasy series as a whole. But, come here. We're gonna talk for a minute. I'm gonna say something that's gonna blow your mind, and it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. So come here. We're gonna get close for this. We're gonna get very close for this. You know they're called options, right? You don't have to use them. Crazy. I played the entirety of Final Fantasy XVI without using any of these rings, except just to see what the icon looked like above your health bar, because they added that to show people if people were using these accessibility options or not. And I'm not saying that to flex, I'm saying that to show people you don't have to use everything that the game gives you if it's going to hinder your enjoyment or your playstyle. It's not like Kingdom Hearts 3 where those options are constantly presenting themselves as you play. It's 5 items in your inventory that you can ignore and will get buried underneath all the other items that you collect. I'm not as used to action games as a lot of people are, and I forced myself to learn a lot of the mechanics because that's how I wanted to play the game. And I had a blast, and there were parts that I struggled with. Look, overall, Final Fantasy XVI to an experienced action player will not be that difficult. But for those who aren't used to these kinds of games, will have a blast if they take the time to learn how these games work, regardless of how they do it. I think Final Fantasy XVI handled these options very well in terms of giving many options on how to play the game. I don't think it shoots themselves in the foot. I think it gives players more options for those who needs them. This may come as a shock to some people, but not everything needs to be Dark Souls level of difficult in order to make a game enjoyable. And this just brings it right back around to the main argument. Not every game needs to cater to everyone, including people who like to complain about shit like this. Look, if game journalists want to use these options to make their job a breeze and try to slander a game because they're using the accessibility options, go right ahead. No one fucking listens to game journalists anyway. No one likes game journalists. Almost every single video of mine, I'm calling out IGN on some stupid bullshit. But that has no issue with how I experience a game. That's why I always like player reviews more than professional journalism reviews, because it's someone who actually took the time to play the game. I don't think it's the developer's fault if they wanted to add in options that cater to players that aren't at your skill level. And fun fact, you can still play this game as normally intended. It's still an option. Look, it's just a dumb opinion for dumb reasons, and honestly, it's not a flaw in the game, it's just a flaw in your logic. Alright, sorry, that was longer than intended. Let's get back to the final portion of the gameplay. Outside of combat, you openly explore each zone, either on foot or on Chocobo once you unlock it. As said before, there's not really any reasons to explore, as there aren't any really new treasures to find, optional areas that lead you to more interesting items, nor extra dungeons for extra bosses. You mostly just run from point A to B, collecting various small items on the ground and fighting enemies. There aren't any random encounters. Instead, it's more like Final Fantasies 11 through 15, where you can see the enemies on the field and choose if you want to fight them or not. Look, I have no issues with random encounters at all, as long as it's balanced right, but I vastly prefer this over them. I understand that fighting a bunch of enemies just becomes redundant as you can get through the fight pretty quickly, but I can't think of a Final Fantasy game where random encounters don't just become press A to win, except for the original NES Final Fantasy games. A lot more of the challenging fights comes with the extra content of Final Fantasy XVI. In terms of side content, you've actually got quite a few things to do. First thing is obviously the side quests. I've already talked about how the side quests build the community around you while kind of messing with the pacing of the story, but there's more to it than just that. Some side quests are very MMO-like, where either you have to talk to someone, collect something, or kill something, and then come back for the reward. Others have you do the same thing, but have their own side stories, exploring the lives of other various characters like Blackthorn and Karen. Some people say they wish this was a part of the main story, and I honestly disagree. This game is about building a community, and taking the time to get to know them from your personal time is a huge reward for this kind of game. Final Fantasy VI actually did something sort of similar, where at the end of the game, finding the other characters are optional, and you explore the rest of their backstories and their supposed side quests. Obviously they were handled very differently, but the concept is still similar. Just some food for thought. Besides the side quests, there are hunts. These have become some sort of a staple in modern Final Fantasy games. Each hunt has a rank, a location, and you go and take it down. This is a lot of where the extra bosses come in. These guys are beefed up and ready to go toe-to-toe with you. You get a bounty for completing each one, as well as points you can spend in the Patron's Whisper for various rewards. DLC has also been announced for this game, and if there's something I could ask for, it's to expand the hunt board a bit. I'd love to take on extra bosses like Gilgamesh and other Final Fantasy characters as secret bosses, kind of like how it was in Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age. At least from what I heard, I haven't quite dove into that yet, but I still think something like this would be very cool. Next, you have the Chronolith Trials. These put your skills with your icons to the test. You have 3 stages and a final boss that you have to take on with just 1 icon and 2 abilities that switch each stage. These trials are timed, and specific moves get you extra time to take into the next stage since the time carries over. These were extremely fun and satisfying to get right. And speaking of these stones, you have a stone in the hideaway that you can use for a chapter select, training, etc. I didn't check this out too much, but it very much helped me for the trophy where I couldn't get hit during a boss fight. And last but not least, there's Final Fantasy mode in New Game Plus, the final challenge that I had to do for my Platinum trophy. This is a new difficulty option that gets unlocked after beating the game, that doubles the level cap, enemies become a little more aggressive, enemies get mixed up a bit, and new items are also unlocked. This mode was a blast to play through, but I will admit that I do wish that this was either available from the start or for a fresh save file. I don't need my games to be difficult, but I think that this would make a new playthrough much more interesting considering the changes, such as the enemies getting new moves that can mess you up, and the QuickTime events no longer having button prompts, which I think I enjoyed a lot more because it required me to pay more attention to what I was doing. Overall, this was a great mode and I highly recommend. Final Fantasy XVI does offer a few things in terms of distractions, but I do wish that there was just a little bit more. Either like extra dungeons or extra super bosses that could be taken on. I just want more from this game, and if that doesn't prove to you that this is a good game, I don't know what will. The fact that I want to continue playing the game and I want more to be added into the game so that I can play more of the game just should show you how much I just utterly enjoyed the gameplay stuff of this game. But as it is, Final Fantasy XVI does have a few good things in terms of side content. I just wish there was a smidge bit more. So, while Final Fantasy XVI did fall short in its pacing as well as its RPG elements, it excels in its story and its world building. Exploration might not have been its strong suit, but this game is a wonder to look at. Look, Final Fantasy XVI is not going to be a hit for everyone, but if you are a gamer who loves a great story with some world building and character building side quests with some satisfying action-based combat, Final Fantasy XVI, it's a must-play. Final Fantasy has always been this series of games with so much debate around it. Everyone's going to have different opinions on every single game of the series, whether they like it, dislike it, hate it, burn it in a fire, praise it to the ever-lords of Final Fantasy, or whatever people want to do. But in my personal opinion, every single game in this series is worth being a part of this series, because that's what this series is. It's a bunch of different experiences for everyone. And Final Fantasy XVI, love it or hate it, is a very, very much worthwhile entry in the series. Circling back to the question of whether or not this game is a quote-unquote Final Fantasy game, I can't see this game without Final Fantasy. The chocobos, the summons, everything about this game screams Final Fantasy and throws Final Fantasy in your face. It's a lot different from the other games, don't get me wrong, and that will rub people the wrong way. But if you just give it a chance, and you take the time not worrying about how it's not turn-based, or how it's not fully an RPG, or all these little complaints that people have about it, I think you'll find yourself enjoying Final Fantasy XVI a lot more than you would think that you did. So, honestly, before even picking up this game, or even like when I saw the trailers for Final Fantasy XVI, I didn't know if I was gonna like it. And it wasn't because of the gameplay. It wasn't because of, you know, all these other like small little nitpicks or, you know, all this stuff. I just didn't know if I was gonna enjoy the story. I didn't know if I was gonna enjoy the characters. If you want to be honest with you, I see a lot of the old fantasy-esque stuff, you know, like the Dungeons and Dragons and the Origins, all the origin stuff that like Final Fantasy came from, that kind of stuff. I've just seen a lot of it. and I didn't know if I was going to enjoy it. But after the first 2 hours of this game, I was hooked. The story was fantastic. The story grabbed me. I wanted to know more. I wanted to keep playing this game. I wanted to keep playing this game off stream, but I didn't because, you know, obligations and shit. But the point is, if you give something a chance, you might find yourself enjoying it more than you think. Try it out for yourself. Play the demo. See if you enjoy it. Just don't let others who like to gatekeep other games in the series, don't let them dissuade you from trying stuff out for yourself, because you never know until you try. I love going through my comments in my Final Fantasy ranking and just seeing how different games affect different people. And that is what's so great about gaming, is that so many games affect you in different ways. And I'm going to have a whole video talking about this because of a specific game that I want to talk about in the near future. But basically, the point is, don't knock it until you try it. Because you might find yourself finding one of your favorites that you've played in a long time. After playing, judging it, reviewing it, reflecting on it, after doing all of it, Final Fantasy XVI is my game of the year. I love this game, and no purist gatekeeper opinions is going to change that for me. And that is what I love about these videos. Spewing my opinions, not giving a shit. But anyway, to wrap this all up, Final Fantasy XVI was honestly kind of an eye-opener. I didn't think I was going to like this game. And I enjoyed it much, much more than I thought I would. Which opens my mind to a lot more things in the coming future. So, is this game a Final Fantasy? Hell yeah. I can't see it without Final Fantasy. Worthwhile entering the series? Yes. Great game? Yes. Gonna be for everyone? No. But should you try it? Abso-fucking-lutely. If I were to give this game a score, it would be a 9 out of 10. The story, the world building, everything is fantastic. The only thing that could make this a 10 out of 10 for me is more. More hunts, more side dungeons worth exploration, maybe the pacing fixed a little bit. But a 9 out of 10 for me for Final Fantasy XVI. But with all that, it's time for me to end this video off. The long anticipated Final Fantasy XVI review has come to a close. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do what you guys do on that YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at OperationGamer1. All that cool stuff. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. I really don't give a shit anymore. Be sure to check out the live streaming channel in the description below. I don't know if we're playing Luigi's Mansion or if we are playing Ratchet & Clank right now. I know we're still probably playing through Ratchet & Clank at least. But, you know, month of October, God only knows what I'm going to be doing. I still haven't decided yet, and I'm making this video now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys agree with my opinions, great. If not, let me know why in the comments below. I'd love to read them. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.